10 years ago, Notre Dame men's basketball was coming off a truly magical season where the program won its first conference tournament and advanced to the Elite Eight for the first time since 1979, came just oh so close to knocking off then undefeated number one seeded Kentucky to go to the Final Four, and finished in the AP top 10 for just the second time in the previous 30 years. The Irish followed that season up with a year that, while shaky, still included victories over Duke and North Carolina and a second consecutive trip to the Elite Eight for the first time in nearly 40 years. It seemed like we were entering a golden age of Irish basketball, as even after losing several key contributors, ND made the dance and won a game for the ninth time since 2007 in 2017. Well, it is now 2025, and Notre Dame has only gone dancing a single time since that 2017 season, Bray's penultimate season in 2022. They only posted two other winning seasons in that time frame in 2018 and 2020. Bray stepped down after a dismal 11-21 season in 2023, and in stepped Micah Shrewsbury. Fresh off leading Penn State to their first NCAA tournament win in 22 years, Shrewsbury, an Indianapolis native who got his first head coaching gig in the college ranks at IU South Bend, seemed like a perfect fit, but he came into a horrific situation with a roster sporting the least D1 experience in the country. He was expected to get a lot of leeway, and things were rough to begin with. Home losses to Western Carolina and the Citadel headlined a 7-16 start, including a 2-10 mark in conference play, before the team won 5 of their next 6, including a big home win over future Elite Eight team Clemson, which saw freshman phenom Marcus Burton drop 21 points. Notre Dame would drop their next 2 games before bowing out in the second round of the ACC tournament, and they finished with a 13-20 record, but some bright spots to look forward to and build on for the next season, which included the return of ACC Rookie of the Year and third-team All-ACC member Marcus Burton. Notre Dame started the 2024-25 season 4-0. They crept into the KenPom top 50 before a disastrous home loss to Elon was followed by a Marcus Burton injury early on versus Rutgers, and that turned into a 5-game losing streak. Notre Dame would rebound to win their next 3 before losing 4 in a row, which included 1-point losses to North Carolina and NC State and an 8-point loss on the road against Duke. This was the story of Irish basketball last year, as they'd win a few, lose a few more, and they never really found their footing on their way to a 15-18 record, which, while technically an improvement, has made this upcoming season an absolute make or break for Shrewsbury and South Bend. And there's a season that starts this Monday, in fact. So I thought we'd break down how the Irish stand going into this year and whether or not Coach Shrewsbury can make it to March and go dancing. We'll start with the departures, as Notre Dame lost Tay Davis and J.R. Konieczny to the transfer portal, while Matalako, Nikita Konstantinovsky, and Julian Roper left the ranks of college basketball altogether. Returning from last year's squad is the ACC's leading scorer in 2025, Marcus Burton, as well as major contributors from last year's team, Braden Shrewsbury, a career 37% three-point shooter on over 400 attempts, former 4-star Sir Muhammad, who finally had a healthy offseason after an injury-riddled freshman year, occasional secondary ball handler Logan Imes returns as well, and Kevin Jai, the enigmatic big man who was secretly one of the ACC's best rebounders a season ago. Garrett Sundra and Cole Serta are 2 rising sophomores who were thrust into action last year due to injury and figured to be mainstays of the rotation now as well. Notre Dame was light on the transfer portal this year, but brought in Northern Arizona big Carson Tout, who led college basketball in rebounding a season ago after coming out of high school with no Division I offers. But the real meat of the bones of this offseason was a top 10 recruiting class arriving on campus featuring the highest-ranked recruit of the modern recruiting services era for Notre Dame in guard Jalen Harrelson, with 3 other 4-stars, including forwards Ryder Frost and Brady Kohler, and center Tommy Anneman, who sadly is currently dealing with an injury. This is easily Shrewsbury's most talented ND squad and is also the most his team he's had, which is why this year is so pivotal. The excuses of the Bray era are long gone now, and with the investments being made in the basketball team, the time for results is now. So let's see how the Irish might fare in 2025-26, just in my opinion. We'll start here with the non-conference, which begins with a 3-game homestand versus Long Island University, Detroit Mercy, and Eastern Illinois. 3 teams that rank in the doldrums of college basketball, but that hasn't stopped Irish teams of the past few years from laying an egg and derailing the season before it gets started. I think Notre Dame bucks that trend and goes 3-0 here, simply because I just cannot stomach the thought otherwise. Then following that Candyland cakewalk, we enter the segment of doom with a road game versus Ohio State, a home date with Bellarmine, a Players Era tournament in Vegas versus number 19 Kansas and Rutgers, and a third game depending on how the Irish perform. Then there's the ACC-SEC Challenge at home versus Mizzou, and a road game against TCU in Fort Worth. All those teams, except Bellarmine and maybe Rutgers, are legitimate NCAA tournament contenders and teams that Notre Dame will have to beat to impress the selection committee if they want to have a shot in March. The Players Era tournament gives Notre Dame an opportunity to shake a truly wretched recent history versus ranked teams. Since defeating number 5 Wichita State in November of 2017 to win the Maui Invitational Tournament, Notre Dame is just 4-40 versus AP top 25 teams, with their most recent victory being against number 20 Michigan State in the November of 2022. I think Notre Dame goes in, okay, just 3-3 here with wins versus Bellarmine, Rutgers, and then an upset at home versus Mizzou. I think they'll lose to Kansas, Ohio State, and TCU. Just at this point, I have a really hard time seeing Notre Dame shift gears from the first 3 games to knock off Ohio State and Columbus. And while Kansas has their lowest AP poll ranking since 2008, it is still a very tall task to hang with the Jayhawks. Then a quick turnaround from that Mizzou game, I think, fells the Irish in Fort Worth, bringing their record to 6-3. Notre Dame wraps up the non-con with a trio of Christmas treats against Idaho, Evansville, and Purdue-Fort Wayne. A 3-0 mark here brings the Irish to 9-3 heading into conference play. And Notre Dame's first month of ACC play begins with a West Coast road trip to play Stanford and Cal. Then 2 home games versus Clemson and Miami before going back on the road to Virginia Tech and number 25 UNC. Then they return home to face Boston College and Virginia, and then in January at Syracuse. This is a tough month with a lot of travel, but I think Notre Dame will take both games out west, drop the home opener in ACC play to Clemson, but then beat Miami, lose both road games in Blacksburg and Chapel Hill, rebound to beat Boston College and Virginia, and then drop the game in Syracuse to sit at 14-7 and 5-4 in ACC play after January. February begins with the alternating away and home games, starting at number 11 Louisville, home versus FSU, at SMU versus Georgia Tech, and at Pitt before a 3-game homestand starting with number 7 Duke, then NC State and Stanford before ending the regular season in Chestnut Hill against Boston College. I think Notre Dame drops the Louisville game before ripping off 3 straight wins, then dropping 3 straight games and ending the year with 2 more wins to bring the overall record to 19-11 and 10-8 in conference play. Notre Dame really does have a favorable schedule, especially in league play, at least how it looks right now. This is a pretty solid Irish squad, and I think 19-11 is a good record, but I just don't think it would cut it to make it into the dance without a win over a Duke, North Carolina, Clemson, Louisville, or even an NC State type team in Will Wade's first year. This is still easily Shrewsbury's best team and a great shot at a 20-win campaign, which Notre Dame hasn't seen in several years. But there's just too many question marks, such as who will pick up the scoring slack if Burton has an off night shooting the ball? Can Carson Tout hang with the high major competition day in, day out? How good will Jalen Harrelson be from the jump? And frankly, can this team just learn to win? Which has been an unfortunate trend for Shrewsbury, as Irish teams have really hung in there with some teams that went on to great performances in March, but they just gone dry in the last 4 minutes and totally collapsed and knocked themselves out of a position to win the game or lost in the final seconds. And it's just been a team that, well, you kind of just expect them to lose in these situations. If they can buck that trend and knock off some of these teams like Kansas in the non-conference or Ohio State, or even upset Duke at home, that could really change the perspective of this team and the program. With the season just around the corner, Micah Shrewsbury, Marcus Burton, and the rest of the Irish are looking to announce themselves as back on the national stage, but you can't dance until you get on the floor, and it all starts Monday night in South Bend.